It's the most wonderful time of the year. Busy season, everybody's favorite time of the year, of course, right? We got a fun episode about workload, busy season. How do we manage it? How do we keep spirits high during the season of usually blue spirits? So, fun episode today. Welcome to Unqualified Opinions. Welcome to Unqualified Opinions, an off-the-cuff talk show where we go in-depth with very qualified leaders, giving us their hot takes to each other, to me, to you, on a variety of topics. Today's special episode is talking about everybody's favorite season, busy season. And I am your host, Drew Carrick, and what I'll be doing is awarding points that don't mean anything. Completely arbitrary, completely subjective, no objectivity here, so don't tell the SEC. I am going to award the winner an unqualified opinion, whoever gets the most points. What you could do with it, we're not really sure. Hang it on your wall. You make it the background on your computer. That would be a kind of cool thing to do with your unqualified opinion. We'll sure to gift wrap it in something really nice because 'tis the season for that sort of spirit. Nonetheless, I'm ready to jump into today's show, which is taking a deeper dive into the major drivers of burnout when it comes to accountants, and which is busy season. So I've got a lot of facts, stats, and quotes, things that we can sort of opine on. And I have a wonderful panel here of qualified individuals giving us their very unqualified opinions on these topics. So in case everybody doesn't know, some of my favorite folks in the industry, let's just go around the room and get everybody started off here. So Kristin, why don't you take it away?
Hi, my name is Kristin Gayoso. I am the director of finance at a sports betting technology company in New York. I started my career in public accounting, 5 years at Deloitte. And on the side, I also run some pretty big accounting meme social media pages you might know at Let's Get Fiscal, at The Accounting Batch, and at Big Four Confessions.
Awesome. So is busy season existing in the sports gambling world or in the meme world? I don't know. Is there a busy season for that?
I'm not in the sports betting world. I'm more of the accountant behind the scenes. But busy season in industry, in my experience, is nothing compared to what I had in public accounting. That was another world. It's much more steady now.
And the memes, is there this is the key busy time for meming? It's gotta get these memes out.
No, the quantity of my memes go down the busier I am. It's actually crazy. So right now I'm a little slow on memes because it's budgeting time in Q3.
All right, Kelly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Rohrs. I am from Long Island, New York, and I run an accounting and tax practice. Virtual practice who services professional services.
Terrific. And have you grown up and lived on Long Island your whole life?
Born and raised. My parents were born and raised. My grandparents were born and raised. I don't think we'll ever leave.
Did you go away to college?
No.
Okay, so this is Long Island's finest bubble. Terrific there. Love it. As a fellow Long Islander myself, I've made my way out to our glorious studio for Unqualified Opinions here in Los Angeles, and excited to have you guys all on the show. Dave, you want to wrap us up with our around the table introduction?
Sure. So my name is Dave Ashworth. I run a company called the Quantified Group. Started it a little over 10 years ago now, and we do outsourced accounting and bookkeeping services. Okay,
so why'd you go with quantify instead of qualify?
That's a good question. I don't know. Quantified numbers. I don't know. Just came up with something. Someone else made it up and it sounded cool. So here we are 10 years later.
Cool. And then the question I feel like everybody always has is where do you come up with the logo? Who makes the logo? Because we're talking creative accountants here. Are you sketching that out on a pad, or what are we doing there with that?
It definitely was not me. I don't have an artistic bone in my body, but I have some friends that do. I'm very particular with how things look, but I can't come up with anything. So basically anybody that works with me on that type of stuff is not too thrilled with our relationship because I just pick everything apart, but I can't do anything myself. So that's how it goes.
That's interesting. You make maybe a great executive producer or something like that. So pitch yourself to get a little show. I want to start everybody off with a little a Mythbusters segment, which I've got 5 myths here that came from the Powers Company. They did a study of just these sorts of 5 things on company culture, because company culture is very reliant, especially when it comes to accounting, on busy season. And the thing about the context of this is it doesn't even have to just apply to accounting. I mean, this is across the board where people go through these seasons, if you will, which is, how we'll define busy season momentarily, but there's all these different ebbs and flows, and it's how do you keep sort of morale high during the more difficult times that everybody's inevitably faced with, whether it's you're trying to scale your business, whether it's you're trying to close the books at month end, you're trying to build your budget for the new fiscal year. So lots of different options here. These are myths, but there is validity to, just like every stereotype, there is validity to it, right? So I'm curious the hot takes on some of these. So the first one is company culture should develop organically. It's just something that is fostered just amongst the people.
I don't think so. I think that company culture starts from the top. And, you really have to build relationships with the rest of your employees and the rest of the firm. And it really starts with the tone at the top.
I mean, is there something that the leaders can do to set that sort of tone?
I think it's really important to be genuine, to be honest with your employees, to boost morale, be able to give constructive feedback, whether it's good or bad. I think employees do value that. And, if you do have constructive feedback and it's maybe not so good, if we can come from a place of encouragement and you can do better next time, I think that really, really makes a difference in firm morale.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely not wise to just let your employees and everybody just determine the culture, and whatever comes of that is your culture. I think that's does not sound like a good idea to me. Like Kelly said, it needs to come from the top. It needs to come from the people that are running the company. They need to foster that culture. It has to be something that's very intentional too. Like, you have to work on that. You have to talk about that. But I also think too that while it does come from the top, a good leader is someone that leads by example and listens as well. You need to listen to what people are saying, what's working, what isn't. Don't let your ego and your pride get in the way of, okay, I want it to go this way, but everybody's saying it should go this way, and there's a good reason for it, but it's going to go this way because that's what I said and I'm the boss. Like, you need to listen to what people are saying, what's working and what isn't. And that starts at the top, and a good leader should be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I was going to say too. I don't even think it's a hot take because we're all just in so much agreement that this comes from the top. And I think it's important for leadership and the C-suite to just take a step back. And when you're developing your company and trying to develop the culture, start with values. What do you want the values of your company and employees to strive for? And then push that down. Actually think about those values. And it could be being transparent or thinking differently, working hard. I mean, various different values, and then communicate that to the employees, communicate it to the company. And if every company has kind of a bad apple, the one person you don't really want to work with because they're just so negative, or maybe they're toxic or something like that, those people gotta go. Leadership cannot be afraid to call those people out, bring HR into it. You can't let toxic people spread their negativity throughout the country, because that just throws company culture out the window.
Employee feedback, is that what's measuring the company culture, or how should we be measuring company culture? I mean, you talk about quantifying, Dave, right? I mean, how are we measuring the employee culture? Is it just, HR sends out a survey and they sort of send it back, and is that the best? Is that the best we got, or I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I do think employee feedback is very important. I don't know if just sending a survey is the only way. It could be a way. I think it's important to find ways to allow people to share their genuine thoughts without repercussions, if that makes sense. I think if you if I'm the boss and I'm sitting with an employee, I'm probably not going to get the full picture because they also are protecting themselves and their job. So finding ways to get them to open up completely. But I also think feedback from your clients and customers as well. They can probably speak into your culture pretty well from an outsider perspective. So I think the combo of those two, but I think the big thing is getting feedback and opinions that are unfiltered is important.
And one way to know immediately if you have a bad company culture is look at your turnover. Right. If it's high, you're doing something wrong. One thing that we implemented is during performance reviews, which we do twice a year, there's also upward feedback, which is anonymous, because employees need to be able to be honest and know that there's enough upward feedback where no one can identify exactly who you are.
I think that, employee feedback is definitely very important. I think employees need to be able to be part of the decision making in the firm as well. To be able to give feedback on processes and maybe software that's implemented is just as important. And, to know that your leaders are passionate about advancing the firm, I think is really important for company culture too. To think that your firm is perfect or there's no room for improvement or that you're using the best of the best systems and software, it's never true. The firm has to acknowledge that there's always better ways to do things. There's always new technology that's coming out, and to allow employees to have a say in that, I think really can give you a better picture of company culture and where that company is going in the future.
Is there like an idea that you've percolated on of like, oh, a company should just really do this? Like it's something that probably most companies aren't doing. I mean, maybe a super innovative one might be doing something to sort of get that anonymous feedback or to create or foster that. Like, what's the most creative way that you think would be? I have a couple in mind, but I don't want to spoil them until I kind of hear what you guys are thinking.
That's a tough question. To be able to get completely anonymous feedback from your employees or from your clients. I mean, I tried to implement like an anonymous type form sort of, questionnaire to people after tax season. Like, listen, I want to hear your feedback, good and bad. Employees, I want to hear your feedback. And I actually got zero feedback. Which is not great. Maybe if I had an in-person firm, I might put one of those jars out there and say, hey, you know what, why don't you put let's put a suggestion box out there. Let's, maybe type out, your biggest critique or your suggestion and put it in the box anonymously.
For us, being a small team, we're just a handful of people. Yeah. Being anonymous doesn't really work because It's going to be one of three people. So just kind of take your pick. So that doesn't really work. So the only thing that I've really tried to do is just be open and honest about things that I need to work on. And real about things that we need to work on as a company in hopes that they will then open up on their side as well. Just being genuine. A lot of times we'll breed that from them as well. That's the only thing that I've really found to work so far.
Yeah, so I think if you have a small team and can't really take advantage of anonymous feedback, another thing you should be doing too is we have like constant check-ins, like once a week, twice a week. I have a check-in with my direct report where I'm totally transparent with her. What's going on in the business? What's upcoming? How's your workload? Do you need my help with anything? Just be totally honest and transparent. And I think employees just really appreciate that.
One of these concepts is I don't know. I feel like if you have a large enough of a company, and like let's look at like a company that's at scale, right? So 200 plus employees, right? Sometimes there are smaller teams where you have the incident like you're talking about with Dave, right? Where you know who's it's going to be because there's only like two or three people that could possibly even when you have a big company, sometimes not everybody's reporting to everybody. So you have like two or three direct reports. You can kind of predict the writing style. It takes away, I think, of the ability to be completely anonymous. How did you feel about like a consultant that's job is to come in and just kind of like gather all the feedback? They're completely unrelated to the company, and you can just give that unfiltered feedback to that person who then writes it into information, say, a lot of people have sort of mentioned this, and now you can sort of present to HR, here's the holes that I feel like are happening in your company.
So I have a good story about that.
Cool.
I think that's a great idea, but I do think you have to have the right leadership to pull that off. So my wife worked at a company that was having some issues, and they decided to bring in this third-party consultant to do exactly what you said. And all of these people gave this feedback, and it was like, you need to change this and this and this. And it ultimately ended up that like the CEO president basically needed to go. That's kind of where it ended up. Like that was the problem. And he was basically just like, no, I'm not changing anything. We're going to keep going on. Yeah. So it needs to have the right leadership to do that. But I do love the idea. Like you're going to get like full, open opinions on everything. It's going to be compiled together. There's going to be themes that come out of that. But for anything to happen, you need to have the leadership that's willing to actually make those changes.
And pay for the investment. Because I'm going through budgeting, I'm like just imagining trying to get that approved. Like, oh, we could use that somewhere else.
Especially when they're going to be paying for probably a lot of opinions about themselves that they might not want to hear.
Yeah.
And another idea that I had sort of thought is because, again, I think there's this fear of being an individual, right? So I think if you go into group style, where I had this concept for like an employee council of sorts, right? Perhaps, you're new to a company, you can evaluate the different crevices and you see from the ground floor. It's like kind of like Undercover Boss in a sense. I think that is actually a really valid way to see like what's being discussed at the ground floor. I know it's just a show, but I think there is a lot of validity to being able to do that. I mean, usually they end up only just having like one person's story and it's like, oh, look, I made such a difference in this one really hard worker's life. But I think if you actually took that experiment seriously and just kind of like, you're amongst the masses, or you have somebody who's a mole of a sort, who's just like going through the chains. That's how a lot of stuff sort of gets exposed. And I know, my father, for example, he was one of the individuals who worked for New York City. As you can imagine, with any city, it's going to have its certain levels of, corruptness or just not the most cleanly of organizations, right? Because it's very much so, who do you know and how much experience have you had kind of with these people, and you take care of your own. That kind of happens when you end up with these city sort of things. But there was an individual who was in there and put in place through the mayor, who was like, I want to know what's going on in this work environment, and was able to sort of expose it. This guy's doing a really good job. He's always trying to get his work done. These people are always trying to like kick the can. They're always trying to like avoid it and see how they can milk the system. And then he's able to sort of come up and write the report. So it's almost like the consultant sort of thing, but a little more undercover detective, if you will.
I don't know how well received that's going to be by a lot of employees. To put some secret operation in place, to me, it just seems like a lot of people would probably be blindsided. You might not get the right opinions from people. I think that your first idea was much better. Sorry.
So, I want to touch on this because I think the first one is the more formal, it's the more professional way to go about it, right? And you can have a sit down. It's almost, we accountants love walkthroughs, right? We love learning the ins and outs of a process or a system and how things are done. How does somebody do their job? But I think you get that unfiltered, like employees gossiping to each other is the most raw, unfiltered. And I'm not saying it's good. Like there's a certain level of toxicity that I think kind of comes with that. But if I'm a leader, I don't know. In my opinion, if I'm a leader, I want to know what are those unfiltered toxic things that are happening, because that will eventually deteriorate your company, I think, from the inside out.
I do think a group setting could help a little bit with some of it, though. Maybe it's not sending someone in undercover. I don't know how I feel about that either, sure. It's an interesting one. But a group setting, maybe talking to like a third party consultant where somebody may not want to share something if they feel like they're the only person. But if somebody shares something and it's like, hey, you know what? I kind of felt that too. Then you might be able to get a little momentum and a little more of that unfiltered opinion. If there's multiple people talking about things, feel like there's a group effort towards something. I feel like there could be some benefit to that side of it.
Sure.
And just
Yeah,
going back to the mole thing, I mean, if you do have somebody in there and they are picking up on these little toxic conversations, like sometimes people say things in the heat of the moment and they don't have time to actually process things. So sometimes it's not exactly our truest behavior.
I don't think the mole idea is a good idea either. But if a CEO or leadership is really interested in seeing what people are actually talking about, then they should take exit interviews more seriously. I've always been honest in my exit interviews. I think it's really important so that organizations can grow from it. I know not everybody's like that, but even just if 25% of people are honest in an exit interview, if leadership wants to go through that and actually read what people are saying, that's where they're going to learn everything. I think a lot of times they just kind of write them off as a check the box thing, but actually read them.
If companies really made it very clear that you were going to be able to use those exit interviews and have them actually taken seriously and not be sort of like a held over your head sort of, I mean, again, you're out the door anyway. So it's like, well, what does it really matter? I should be able to be completely honest. Yet there's still that fear. If I say something, that's just, nobody wants to burn bridges ever. That's obviously always the biggest thing. And I think that's what stops people from feedback in general is you're afraid, you don't know how fragile that bridge is. And I think it's the job of leadership probably to say, this is a strong bridge. You don't have to worry about burning it, but I do want to know where the weak and pressure points are, where it could potentially fall down.
And obviously, say it professionally. I was very honest in my Deloitte exit interview that the travel was too much. I didn't see myself being able to have a family with this kind of lifestyle one day. There are things that you can say professionally that hopefully they'll take seriously, but I don't know if it was ever read.
Sure. Yeah, I think that just to add on to that bridge that you're talking about, that doesn't start when the exit interview starts. That starts the day that you start that job. If you have a good culture there, an open culture as you're in that company, when you go to leave, that bridge has been built already. It's going to be almost nearly impossible to build it at the very end. If you don't have a good relationship, you're not going to want to share because at that point, you know that the bridge is only being built for them to get something out of it. You need to build that bridge from the beginning and listen from the beginning. And then if somebody does end up leaving, which obviously people are going to leave, then you're going to get that opinion because you valued their opinion all along.
Also, public accounting isn't going to want to burn your bridge because you might be a future client for them one day. So even though they threaten burning bridges or whatever, if you're a future CFO, they're going to come to you 20 years later and be nice to you because they want you as a client.
Right. Or they need you to come back and work, especially in today's market. They probably will want you. They'd take you back in a second.
Yeah, they don't have room to burn bridges.
That's right.
The old bring back the old person who left client spot. That's a good one, Kristin. That's one for there.